so now I'm recording. All right, can you guys see the first slide up?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, I saw that there was a couple people still popping on. So again, if you've come in a bit late, my name is Becky Setledge, and I'm the County Extension Agent for the University of Hawaii Manoa with CTAR, and I oversee the 4-H youth development and livestock programs here on the Big Island. And I'm also the state coordinator for the Junior Master Gardener program. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure before the end of our time together that in the chat box, if we can get you to sign in with your first and last name and where you live, and be sure to include all the names of other people that are in your party. Okay. All right. So, so today we've got quite a bit to cover. So as you can see here, these are some of the things that we're going to try to touch on today as part of this orientation. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start off by giving you a little bit of a history of our program. So those of you that are new, it'll give you a better understanding of kind of how we've gotten where we are today. We're also going to take a look at our contest schedule. We're going to talk a little bit about starting seeds versus starting plants. And then we'll also talk about a few basics when it comes to starting seeds or plants. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some things that you could be doing in between the time that you get the plants in the ground to the time that you're going to start pollinating. And then we'll touch on some things about pests, deficiencies, diseases, you know, just things to be watching for. And then we'll cover a little bit about some pollination and you know, then we'll kind of do some wrap ups. Okay. So we do again have quite a bit to cover. And throughout the orientation today, what I thought I would do is periodically pull for some door prizes. And so if you had signed up prior to 5 p.m. yesterday, your names have been thrown into a hat for door prizes. And this year, what I thought I would do is ask for some help with the door prizes. So some of you that know Jim Sherwood from Oregon, he's been a presenter for us, and he's been a real big supporter for our contests that we have here on the Big Island. And so I know some of you guys know him and that's kind of thing. And so he was nice enough to actually pick our door prize winners for today. And so what we're going to do is with the door prizes, again, I'll take little breaks in between and we'll tell you who's won these door prizes. And then if you're here, you know, you can unmute yourself and say, yay, I won, or, you know, put it in the chat box just so that we know that you're here. And if you don't get to us before the end of our program, then I think our door prizes will just go into May's seminar, and we'll use those door prizes for then. Okay. All righty. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about a little bit of the history of our program. All right. So our involvement with our contest started back in 2012 up in the Waimea area. We collaborated with a farmer by the name of Paul Johnston of Kekela Farms. And he was actually running an annual giant pumpkin contest at the Waimea Farmers Market every year. And that particular year, we joined forces with him, which allowed us to include youth and, of course, schools at that time. You know, so we had a youth and school category for our contest. And first year went pretty good. And after that first year, you know, we kind of, you know, thought about it and decided that it would be something that we would want to continue on. So from there, we've held it every year since. In 2013, Noah Dodd, which those of you that were able to be a part of our workshop last month. Noah was one of our presenters, and he still competes with us today. And he actually set a contest record with one of his giant pumpkins at 636 pounds. And although the Hawaii state record, which it's actually was on Maui, was recorded to be 1,023 pounds, which was set in 2009, we still think Noah's pumpkin is the one to beat. Okay. In 2014, that was the year that we moved away from just having giant pumpkins at the contest and began to introduce giant tomatoes as part of our contest. And it was kind of a slow start getting people interested. So that year we added a best tasting tomato contest to try to get people interested in growing tomatoes. And we also included a pumpkin cooking contest. And this was, also the year that we experienced Hurricane Iselle. So, so it was just amazing that we were even able to have a contest, in 2014. And then in 2015, we thought we would try and develop a GPC sanctioned contest, but unfortunately, we only had 3 pumpkins entered that year. And so after that, it was kind of like maybe we're not quite ready to have a sanctioned contest. So since then, we've just put on just a state contest of what we're typically doing every year. Okay, 2016, we introduced the giant watermelons and giant bushel gourds to the contest. And that year was actually when we started to see an increase in popularity with our giant tomatoes. In 2017, we held our first giant fruit and vegetable seminar. We held it in person and virtually. And seeing the response and interest for this seminar, we decided to make it an annual event. And we also that year had a contestant that actually was successful in growing our first giant bushel gourd for our contest. And we decided that year that we would try our luck at moving our contest from Waimea to the JC Hawaii County Fair in Hilo. And although our contest only had a few entries, we actually had more entries than we had in previous years. So we had giant watermelons, the 1 bushel gourd, of course, 3 giant pumpkins, and then we had quite a few tomato entries that year, and then a few miscellaneous entries. In 2018, we introduced our giant sunflowers and long gourds to our contest, and we held our first annual giant fruit and vegetable contest educational tour. And we ended up that year, as some of you that are on will remember, we had a pretty rainy day, but we didn't let that stop our fun. And we went on with our tour, and it was really educational. And not only that, it allowed the contestants to learn some new tricks to growing their plants. And it also allowed them to check out some of the competition. And this year, or this tour, I should say, was something that, again, it seemed we had some interest for it. So it's just something that we've made into an annual event. So then in 2019, we didn't really have anything special that happened that year, other than the fact that we continued to have the great support from our mainland growers that help in donating seeds to our program. And then, of course, last year, as many of you remember, we've had to deal with our COVID situation, but it was actually a very productive year for us. We developed a Facebook group page, and we offered monthly talk story sessions to give support and follow up to make sure everyone was doing okay with their plants. And we continued to hold our annual seminar and tours. But last year, of course, everything had to be held 100% virtually. But I think it was still pretty well attended. And then, of course, at the end of the year, we offered a virtual award ceremony. And we actually ended up with a better year last year, increasing our entries by over 240%. And we ended up with several state records too. So yeah, last year wasn't a total loss, which was kind of nice. Okay, so that's a little bit of our history of our contests. And before we kind of switch gears and start talking about our next topic, which is the contest schedule, I want to do another door prize. Okay, So the door prize that we have is going to be liquid fertilizer. Okay, so it's a bottle of liquid fertilizer. And the person who won that is B Love. Did B happen to make it? You can unmute yourself and say, yay, I won, or put your name in the chat box and say, hey, I won, yay, or whatever. Christine or Donna?
I don't think there's a B.
Okay, so we'll keep her name in mind, and at the end of our workshop, we'll see if she shows up, and if she doesn't, we'll have that for next month's door prize. All right, so again, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about our time schedule, our timetable and schedule. So, you know, when it comes to figuring out when to start plants, you know, we try and have the entries for a contest day, but it's never something that's simple for us to do. We're not fortunate enough to be like we're on the mainland. If, you know, your entry needs a little bit more time, you know, to grow on the plant, you know, if it's not ready for harvest, or maybe it's, you know, ready earlier than you planned. You know, there's always like 1 or 2 extra contests in people's areas on the mainland where they can just take their entry there. But over here, we just don't have that option. We just have the one contest. And we did have a group in Kona one year that tried to copycat our contest. And, you know, I had to kind of plead with them to, you know, not compete against what it was that we were doing, because, you know, every year our numbers vary on the number of entries that we get. And right now there's just not enough contestants to really make more than one successful contest. And then, you know, we have so many variables here on the Big Island, and we're going to soon see how things grow on Oahu and Molokai, because they're going to attempt to hold contests on their islands for the first time. So when we figure out our growing schedule for the year, we try our best to look at how plants have done in previous years and then set the dates that way. Again, knowing that, you know, there may not be, you know, just one perfect time, but, you know, again, we're trying our best to get the most entries that we can for our contest day. And the JC Fair has always been held over the 3rd weekend in September, and still not knowing what our future holds for our COVID situation. Right now, my contact for the fair has told me that they're hoping that we might have a contest or a fair this year. So that would put our contest date for Saturday, September 18th. However, they're also telling me too that there's a possibility that the fair date could be moved to sometime in October. So this year I tried to shoot for kind of a happy medium and kind of figured that this year's dates to be somewhere between September 18th and October 1st. In a worst case scenario, if the majority of our contestants' entries are ready to harvest, say in mid-September, but we find out that the fair won't be, say, until late October, then we'll hold our contest in September at a different location. And then probably what I'll do is just put up a display of some sort to show what we did for our contest at the JC Fair when they hold it, if they end up holding it. Okay. And so as you look at the schedule, you can see that I'm going to be starting tomatoes actually this week, which if all goes as planned, they should be ready to distribute sometime around the 1st week of May. Typically our tomatoes in the past, we've seen that they actually do best when they're started around this time, but growing them right now actually puts them ready to harvest like in early July. So in 2017, we started to kind of follow what the mainland growers were doing, which was to hold what they call a virtual contest. And this is just for tomato entries. And basically what the virtual contest is where contestants can bring their tomatoes to our office to have them officially weighed before the fall contest. So contestants can enter up to 3 tomato entries before mid-August. And then after that, they would need to bring their tomatoes to the actual contest in September. Okay. Cabbage is something that's new for us this year. In fact, if you'd like to try and grow a giant cabbage, and you haven't yet contacted me, I put out word about this a few days ago, to contact me. But if this is something you think you might be interested in trying, please email me today, so that I can get you on the list, because I'm also going to be starting those seeds this week. Okay. Or if you're, not going to want a plant, but you want seeds, then we can arrange to get those seeds to you too. Okay. I'm told that giant cabbage can typically take up to 9 months to harvest. But where things sometimes grow faster here in Hawaii, we just don't know yet how long it's going to take them to get to harvest. So we're actually going to be experimenting this year with our giant cabbage. And we will probably more than likely hold a virtual weigh-in with the cabbage the same time we do the tomatoes, if it turns out that the cabbage is ready in early summer. But I'm hoping that they'll grow all the way until our fall contest date. Okay. And this year with watermelons, we're going to go ahead and try our hand at grafting some watermelons. So those of you that signed up to grow a watermelon, you're going to receive a grafted watermelon, and then just a regular watermelon that, they're giant, but they're just regular ones that haven't been grafted. So we can kind of compare those and see how things differ. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that when we graft that, we're successful in our graft. And if not, then, you'll just get regular giant watermelon plants like we have in the past, but we'll see how that goes. So hopefully those will be ready to distribute towards the end of June, early July. Okay. And then you can see that the remaining schedule for bushel gourds, long gourds, pumpkins, and sunflowers, I've tried to bunch a few together to kind of save you guys a few extra trips to the office to pick up plants, but try and stay flexible with me, because sometimes, the plants, they really take off and can be ready to distribute sooner, or sometimes they're a little bit slower and might not take off as I expect them to. Also, I currently have not received giant field pumpkins and sunflower seeds that a grower had said that he would send to me. And so right now, it's possible that we might not have those seeds to grow, or enough sunflower seeds to go around to everyone. But we're gonna make it work as best we can. And I'm still putting out feelers to some other people that I know that have these seeds. And and we still have some time. So we'll see if we can get those challenges taken care of and still be on track for where we need to be.
Becky,
Yes.
there's a question that says, how much space in the garden will a giant cabbage take?
Good question. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Any other questions?
That's it so far, but I don't know about if they want to
Okay.
unmute and say.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and keep moving on. Okay. So some of you might also be thinking, why can't we just weigh all the entries when they're ready? And, for some of you that competed last year, you might be kind of thinking that same thing, because of course it was pretty nice when you could just weigh, your entries last year when they were ready. But that being said, there was a downfall to that, as you kind of remember, or maybe you don't remember, but the downfall to it was that our first entry weighed in on July 2nd. And our last entry weighed in on October 30th. So for 4 months, everyone had to wait until October 31st to learn who won. And to me, that just isn't a contest. Okay. And second, what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach kids, to manage their projects. Okay. Or, in this case, I know we have some adults too. So, the same goes for the adults, but to manage your projects. And so kind of like what we do with our livestock projects in 4-H, kids are only able to feed out their projects for a certain number of days, and then they only have one show date. Okay. And so I'd like to kind of move to that direction, as far as with our contests. And the other thing too is, with our larger entries, especially our scale one was extremely heavy, and to have to keep pulling it out several times a week to get it set up, it got a little bit time consuming. And second, I'd like to kind of move back to putting everything as far as our large entries anyways onto a certified scale. And I work with our state weighmaster for our scales, and he doesn't charge me to use them, which is great. But typically we only use a scale for one day, and that's on contest day. And so trying to get a certified scale, a large certified scale for 4 months, it's just not going to be that easy to get. And then third, those who won last year, they found out at our virtual award ceremony in October that they won, but wouldn't it be more fun, that to learn that you won and then instantly just be given the prize at the contest in front of the other people that are there, than to, have to wait several days when you can kind of like pick up your prize at the office or get it in the mail, that kind of thing. So that's kind of why I just decided to hold the one contest date this year. Okay. When it comes to plant distribution, when the plants are ready, they really need to get into the ground or into a much larger pot quickly so they can kind of keep growing. And having them stay in our little 4x4 pots that we put them in, they just get root bound, they get nutrient deficient, and they can kind of sometimes get, set back. And so, we want them to continue to grow well. And so this year, what I like to try to do anyways is kind of narrow down the distribution days of when people pick up plants, because before we just, had a day, okay, they're ready, come and get them. And sometimes we'd stretch them out into weeks before people could come out and get them. We're going to try to, narrow it down to 1-2 days at the most this time. And so you can kind of get a rough idea looking at the chart of when they're going to be ready. And then, plants that aren't claimed at that time, then probably a couple days later, I'm going to make them available on a first come, first serve basis, any of the extras. So if people have, extra space and they've got the time to manage them, they can come by and pick them up, which I do have a waiting list for extra plants. So again, something to kind of think about. But again, we want to get those, in the ground or transplanted, again, to just give them the best advantage to grow. Okay. So is there any other questions before we move on? Okay, not hearing anything. Let's see. Okay, so let's do another quick door prize. So we have a bag of tomato fertilizer, and McLean, you won that one. And I know I saw you here earlier. Are you still here? Okay, so we'll have to make arrangements for you to pick
Thank
that up.
you.
All
Yeah,
right.
right on, cool.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about seeds versus getting plants. Okay. So this year, when you guys signed up, you were given the option to either receive seeds or plants this year. And regardless of what you choose, you would either get 2 seeds or 2 plants. And as you can see by the chart, I tried to put together some pros and cons for both. So the pros of starting seeds yourself would be managing the time of when you can start the plant, which might be a good thing. Say if you live in a cooler climate, then you'd have a little bit more time to grow instead of just waiting for the plants that I would be starting. You of course would also learn a new skill of starting seeds, and then of course that sense of accomplishment and joy that you would get from growing a plant yourself from a seed. The con, on the other hand, is that the seeds come with no guarantees of germination. These seeds, even though they're good seeds that we give you, it's just, I can't monitor how you've handled those seeds once it leaves my office. And the second, downfall to starting seeds is there can be a little bit of a learning curve in starting seeds if you've never started seeds before, or especially some of the types of seeds that we have. And I don't want it to like scare you off, but it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. And then third, starting from seed, it does take a little bit more time and effort. Okay. Looking at the other side of things, you know, as far as receiving plants, one of the pros is that you get a jump start with a healthy plant, especially for beginners starting with plants. You know, you don't have to deal with the tender seedlings, you know, when they're the most vulnerable. And of course, there is that added convenience when you can take that plant and just, you know, get it in the ground. Now, the only con or disadvantage, I guess, to the plants would just be that sometimes when you transplant young plants, it could set them back a little bit. And we call that plant shock. And it doesn't happen a lot, but it could. And so that was the only downfall or the con that I could come up with. Those of you that have been, you know, growing these giants for a while, can you think of anything else that would be a pro or a con of getting plants versus seeds or the other way around? Okay, so not hearing anything, I'm gonna figure that that's basically it covers our pros and cons of doing seeds versus plants. Okay. The other thing I want to just say about whether you get seeds or if you get plants, they all have the potential genetically to grow monster-sized fruits and vegetables, but your conditions and your management practices is really what's going to determine your end results. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on and take a look at.
Wait, Becky,
Go ahead.
somebody has a question. Can they get one seed and one plant? Lily has a question.
That's a good question. You know, I think we could make that work if you wanted to try that. So sure, why not? That we could make that work for you. All right. Any other questions? Okay, so again, we're gonna go ahead and move on to talking about seed and plant basics. Okay, I could really make you know, this topic, I could spend a whole day talking about handling seeds and plants. But on the basis of our, you know, our time and stuff today, we're only going to be covering a few basics, and I'll be giving out a little bit of information when you get your plants, and we're going to, you know, periodically provide you like some links to resources that, you know, that I feel will be helpful to you. Plus, you know, my hope this year is to have more in-depth discussions about individual type plants when we have our monthly talk story sessions. But part of the contest too is for you guys to do a little bit of research to learn more about growing these plants, okay? Because that's all, you know, something that we do and have always done, okay? All this being said though, we're not gonna leave you guys hanging. We never have, and we're always gonna be there for you. So know that if you ever need help, all you have to do is ask, okay? So before you start your, you know, before we start kind of getting into it a little bit more, back in mid-March of last month, Noah Dodd and Samantha Robinson, you know, they did a soil prepping 101 workshop for us. And one of the things I want to stress is that, again, you really need to have your ground or your pot or whatever it is, or wherever it is that you're going to be growing your plant. It needs to be ready before you get your plants, okay? And you're going to hear me harp on this a lot all the way up until you guys start getting your plants and beyond, okay? So this is really, really important. So before you get your plants, you want to make sure that you're ready for them, okay? And you're going to find that those that get their plants home, get them right into the ground, they're more apt to be successful with their plants continuing to grow and just do well for them, okay? So something that we kind of started doing a couple years ago, and I'm going to do it again this year, is that that you're going to need to send us a photo or post a photo on our Facebook group page to show us that you are actually ready to receive your seeds or your plants before you get them, okay? And the photo is going to show that the ground has already been worked up, and or if you're growing in a container, that, you know, you have your container, you've got your soil, you know, that sort of thing, okay? if you're growing multiple plants, okay, so if you're growing multiple plants that come at different times, then what I'm going to be expecting is for you to show us photos of where you're going to be putting those plants. And then you're also going to need to show us how your other plants are doing. Okay. And what this does is it helps with accountability, and it also allows us to see how you're doing. Okay. So if you're struggling, you know, that's the time we can really be helping you out. Okay. So if your plant's not doing very good, you know, don't be ashamed to, you know, say, hey, you know, my plant's not doing good, but here's a picture of how it's doing. Okay. Before you get your next set of plants, if you're getting multiple plants. Okay. And I should point out too that even though this is a contest, we want to see everyone be successful. So as I pointed out earlier, again, don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it. And I have to say that last year, and you know, a lot of you that were contestants last year, I'm sure can vouch for me when I say that, you know, everyone did a great job last year, and you know, of helping one another out. And I just would love to see that continue. So, you know, I've also got giant growers that do sit in on our Facebook pages, and they, you know, they want to see that their seeds have done well for you as far as our projects are concerned. So they're also watching, and they'll also help out with some suggestions from time to time too. So, so again, we're going to be there for you. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our site selection. Okay, so you know, when you plan to grow your plants, you know, we're going to want to make sure that you're selecting, you know, a good site for growing. And so you might ask yourself a few things. First, will your plant get enough sun? I believe that all of our plants that we're going to be growing do like sun. Second, does your soil have enough elevation and drainage? And so we do get a lot of rain in certain parts of our island. I don't know about Oahu and Molokai so much, but definitely something to consider. So you need to be prepared for this if you do get a lot of rain, because we don't want your plant roots to rot from that excessive wetness. In relation to water, at times when you need water for your plants, is it close by, or are you going to have to haul water to ensure that your plant has what it needs? Okay. And then lastly, do you have enough space needed to grow the giant plants that you signed up for? Okay. And so what I like to do is just take a little bit of time to you know, talk a little bit about how much space that you're going to need. So I want everybody to kind of think back about when you signed up for plants and what you wanted to grow. I want you guys to, you know, kind of consider some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. Okay. So I know that sometimes when we sign up for this contest, we get real excited and we want to grow everything. But again, in the end run, we want you to be successful too. And although you could probably grow all of these plants, you know, as part of the contest in a really small area, more than likely those plants would not grow to their full potential. And it's possible too that the plants could crowd each other out, and it could kill some off. It could cross with plants you don't want them to cross with, and so on. So space is really important when it comes to growing giants. That's kind of one reason why we started to offer more than just giant pumpkins for this contest, because we knew that for some people, you know, they didn't have the space for that type of a plant. So it's something to think about. I know mainland growers have now started to have fun side competitions too, to see who can grow giants in smaller areas. So as you look at the chart, you'll see that I've listed a 150 square foot contest for Atlantic giants and a 5-gallon bucket challenge for tomatoes. And we're going to discuss those kind of towards the end of the program today, but it might be something to kind of think about if maybe you don't have as much space as you thought you might have. Okay. So after looking at this chart, if you think that you might not, you know, have the space for the plants that you signed up for, you know, no problem. Just let me know. And let's reevaluate what you signed up for now. And this will kind of help us to save extra costs and resources of starting plants that you can't use. Okay. If you remember when you signed up online, I did ask the question too about whether you planned on growing plants in a pot or container, whether you were going to grow it in a garden bed or a large open area on your property. And I also asked for you to describe the size and or the length and width of your planting area. So as I get ready to start plants, I'm going to be reviewing that information. But if you feel, you know, again, that you're not going to have enough space, no worries. Just let me know. And again, we'll set you up for more suitable plants for the contest. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about seeds. So, so as far as now knowing what you have for space, those of you that have requested to start with seeds, this is basically what they look like for the most part. Of course, the slide doesn't do it justice as far as, you know, when it comes to their size. Giant pumpkin seeds, of course, are pretty sizable in size in comparison to, like, say, the tomato or the cabbage seeds, which are really tiny. Okay. But this gives you, again, a little bit of an idea of what our seeds are that we're going to be using for our contest. Okay, so I want to move on and talk a little bit about those of you that are going to be needing to get seeds ready for planting. Okay, so for our large seeds, like our pumpkin, bushel gourds, and long gourd seeds, sometimes their seed coats, they're pretty thick, and it's sometimes hard for them to just germinate by like just throwing them in the ground. And so what we do to help them out is we'll take an emery board or a light piece of sandpaper, and we'll sand down the edges. And you never want to mess with the tip of the seed when you're sanding the edges. So something to keep in mind. And you don't want to file down too far. So you can see here in this photo that I have, you don't want to file down any more than what you see there. You actually get like a tiny little line in the middle, and that's about as far as you want to sand them down. Okay. And then what I do is I'll take those pumpkin seeds and I will soak them for about an hour after sanding them. And with the bushel gourd seeds, I'll do the same thing as I do with pumpkin seeds. So I'll be filing them, you know, just filing down those edges. But I actually, for long gourds and bushel gourd seeds, I actually soak them overnight because their seed coat is extremely hard. And so that I find kind of helps a little bit. And what I've also gone to doing, this was a technique that I picked up a couple years ago. I also will crack the seed coat lightly on the edges. And what I was doing was I was using needle nose pliers to do this. But I learned real quick that the grip that I would have is really inconsistent. And so if you're not careful, you can actually break the seed completely, which you don't want to do. You just want to crack them just ever so slightly. Okay. And so somebody had suggested to me this year to try using a vice clamp and then just, you know, tighten it down and then just add a little bit of pressure, just a little bit at a time, and just enough until I hear it crack just slightly on those edges. And then that should be all that I need. So I'm going to actually try that this year. But if you try to use, you know, needle nose pliers, you know, it's certainly a way to crack that seed coat open just a little bit, but just know that you take that chance that if you're like me, it's really hard to gauge your tension or your grip on, you know, the vice clamps or on the needle nose pliers. Okay. Okay. So anyway, after I've sanded down the edges on those seeds, then what I'll do is I go ahead and they've been soaked, and I'll take them after they've been soaked. I'll place them on a moistened paper towel, and then I place the seeds that are on the paper towel. You know, I'll fold over the paper towel, and then I'll stick them inside a Ziploc bag, and then I'll usually set them up on top of a refrigerator here in my office because, you know, heat rises. But what you want to do is you want to just put them in a warm location, not too hot, but they say anywhere between 72 and 95 degrees, although to me 95 degrees is kind of hot, but I see some guys on the mainland that are germinating at 95 degrees. But know that over here, it's usually about low 70s in my office, and they germinate just fine. And so if I do that, typically in about 2 to 3 days, the seeds usually germinate, at least here in my office, with no problem. And any seeds that aren't germinated in 10 days, I usually toss. Okay. And then just know that if you're germinating seeds, you need to check your seeds daily. Okay. So on the left, you'll see I've got some pumpkin, watermelon, and bushel gourd seeds that I sprouted and or germinated. And they sprouted on like day 2, day 3, roughly. But one time I planted on a Friday thinking, oh, everything will be fine over the weekend. And Monday morning I came back to seeds that look like, you know, what you see here on the right. Okay. So it's best not to let them get to that point. You know, you could still, you know, utilize these seeds, but it's just a, you know, an awful mess to have to deal with. So again, if you're going to germinate your seeds, you want to make sure that you're watching so that they don't catch you off guard like they did that one year to me. Okay. And then from here, what I'll do is I'll put them in a 4x4 pot. But for those of you that are planning to start your plants from seed, you know, you might maybe consider putting them right into the ground at this point if you wanted, but it's up to you. These larger seeds, usually for me anyways, I start seeing them get root bound in about a week and a half or so in the 4x4 pots once they sprout. So you just need to be aware of that. And when I pot these germinated seeds, I plant the seeds about 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep, but it depends on the size of the seed. They say that in general, the seed should be planted at a depth of about 2 times the width of the seed. So if the width is about 1/2 inch, then you would plant them about 1 inch deep. Okay.
Becky,
Yes.
Lily shared that she found that added few drops of hydrogen peroxide to the water and the seeds would germinate faster.
Okay. And what's nice about that too is I think that that'll kind of help if there's like any diseases on the seeds themselves too, on the seed coat. And so that's good. That's good to know. And then once you get them into the soil, usually it takes about another 2 to 3 days that then they'll start to pop up out of the soil. And what I like to do, and this was another technique that I was told, I used to just put the seed point down into the soil, but I found that sometimes the seed coat wouldn't come off, and you know, they got stuck to the cotyledons and stuff. And so one year I was told, well, try laying your seed on its side, and then as the seed pushes up from the soil, that kind of helps the seed coat come off of the you know, the leaves and stuff a lot easier. So you know, something to kind of think about too when you're putting it in the soil if you're starting from seed. Okay. When you're starting with tomato and cabbage seeds, again, you're going to be working with very tiny seeds. So the challenge, of course, here is just going to be making sure that you're not planting them too deep. For these tiny seeds, what I usually do is I start with pre-moistened soil in a tray, and or in this case, it might be a pot for you guys if you're, you know, going to be doing it. And then what I do is I place the seeds on the soil, and then I cover them lightly with just a little bit more soil, not more than about 1/4 inch deep. And then I'll take a spray bottle and I just kind of lightly spray them down, and then I cover it like with a plastic dome. So for those of you that might be on a budget, You can maybe use, recycling materials, like maybe a McDonald's shake, cup that kind of comes with a lid, or you can use clear plastic cups, kind of shown like what you see here on the slide. Okay, to kind of make little domes, or I've even used saran wrap to cover the tops of cups or pots that I might be using. And the idea is just to try to keep those seeds moist. And so that kind of keeps the humidity in, and it just keeps those seeds moist. I'll also periodically, I'll remove the lid or the saran wrap, once or twice, and spray it down lightly, just to, again, make sure that the seeds are staying moist. And then I'll cover them back up until they sprout. And so, and if all goes well, typically my smaller seeds have taken anywhere from about 5 to 14 days on average to germinate. So, so something to think about. And usually after that point, if they haven't germinated by then, I usually, again, I'll toss them. Okay. Okay, so switching gears again, taking a look at, if you're going to be getting plants from me, we've already established the fact that, again, it's really important that you have your ground worked up, or that you have your container, your potting soils ready, okay, before you get your plants, okay? So unless I say something differently to you, you're going to want to get those plants transplanted within a day or so of getting them home. Again, the sooner you get them in the ground or transplant in a larger pot, they're going to do a lot better for you, okay? If your plant is a little leggy when you get it, which sometimes happens when I'm growing in the greenhouse, those plants will really sprout up. It's okay for you to plant a little bit deeper, and that will just kind of help support the plant stem. Okay, so I usually, if they're leggy like that, I'll bury them almost to the where the cotyledons are, and again, that seems to again help them out quite a bit. For those of you that are getting tomato plants, occasionally I'll get a call that when the plants got home, a wind came up and it snapped the plant and it broke the plant. So know that can happen, but you don't need to panic. If you take a look at a tomato plant, like you see it kind of in the middle top picture, you're going to see that all those little fine hairs, okay? If you place it in water or you bury the plant, those little fine hairs will develop into roots, okay? And so it might set your plant back a little bit, but most of the time your plant will turn around and it'll grow for you, okay? If you wanted to, and this is something that I do, at some point we're gonna need to trim our tomato plants. And so sometimes what I'll do is the cuttings that I have, sometimes I'll even put those cuttings in water, and then usually in about a week or so, you'll start seeing roots develop, and then you have more plants that you can start. And that's a great way for extending your growing season. And it also kind of gives you backup plants. So if something should happen unexpectedly with your other plant, then you've got those backup plants. Okay, so something again to kind of think about. When it comes to pumpkins, bushel gourds, and lawn gourds, just a reminder, especially for newbies, you want to kind of keep in mind about the first true leaf. That's really important about your plant, because it kind of gives you an idea of the direction that that your plant's going to grow in. So if you look at the picture in the upper right corner there, you'll see there I have a picture there that shows what the first true leaf is, and then the arrow of the direction that the main vine is going to grow. Okay, so very important with your pumpkins, bushel gourds, and lawn gourds. Okay, and I try to get the plants out shortly after that first true leaf develops. But if you get it home and you set your plant aside, know that before long you're going to have more leaves that are going to be coming out, and it's going to be hard for you to determine which one is your first true leaf. Sometimes the first true leaf is usually bigger than the rest, but I've had times when they're the same size. And so you just want to, again, get it in the ground while it's small, and you're able to determine the direction that it's going to grow. Okay.
Becky? Oh,
Yes, go ahead.
in the chat, Donna said she recommends planting tomato plants deeply up to just below the top set of leaves.
Thank you, Donna. Okay. Yep. And again, all those little hairs are going to be developing into roots, and it's just going to help tack down that plant better, give it better support. And it's also going to, of course, all those extra roots are going to help in nourishing your plant. All right. Okay, so with our pumpkin, bushel gourd, and long gourds, when they grow, what they do is they send out a main vine, and from the main vine, you're going to see secondaries that kind of branch out to the right and to the left of the main vine as it grows. But with watermelon plants, something to keep in mind is they too they have a main vine, but they also have other vines that are all going to be coming out of the same place. So from the stump of the plant. So as you can see in the middle lower picture in the middle there, you've got a little watermelon plant, and you can see how, let me see if the cursor works. Can you guys see this? This right here is your main vine that's starting, but there's going to be vines that are going to be growing all around that area. Okay, so so when it comes to watermelon plants, what I like to do is I like to tie a little ribbon real lightly along that main vine as it grows. And then this way I know which one was my main vine, because they say supposedly the best watermelon will grow off that main. So you can grow them off of the secondaries too, but it seems, and I've seen this even with mine, the better ones do grow off that main vine. Okay. After transplanting, what I also like to do is I like to cover it with something. So in this case, in the lower right corner, you can see on the slide there, I used a laundry basket, and that just kind of helps shade the plant while it's small. And it helps, you know, to like keep chickens from messing with your plants or other pests. And I would also suggest for those of you that have slug or snail issues, get down some Sluggo, or start saving like eggshells, and you can grind those eggshells up and make a powder and sprinkle it around your plant to kind of help deter those slugs and snails from hopefully getting to your tender new plants. All right, so once you get your plants in the ground, there's going to be a waiting period between the time that you transplanted to the time that you will be pollinating. So I want to kind of take a look at some things that you should probably be thinking about during that time period. So so while you're waiting, you might think about things like laying out drip tapes if you plan to water that way, or if you're going to use fan sprinklers, kind of like what I usually will do. I set them on sawhorses, as you kind of see in the upper right picture. And I put them on sawhorses, and that's how I water my plants. But that's a good time to start, you know, figuring out how am I going to water my plants. Okay. And the other thing too is during this slow period of time while I'm waiting for plants to grow, what I'll do is I'll also set up for the next set of plants. If you're going to be growing more than just one type of plant, I'll use that time to be getting ready. So on the middle picture there on the far left, you'll see that I have chickens and a feral rabbit in my area. And I've also had feral pig issues in the past. And so what I do is for those other plants, I have another area. And so I will set up electric fence. And although I don't have soil there, I do get a lot of weeds. So I lay out black plastic or weed cloth. And I also set up my automatic timers for my waters. And I also use a injector fertilizer. And so I use that to fertilize my plants. It's not something that you have to have, but it's something that I use. And so again, you know, I'm just getting things out that I would typically need as the plants get bigger. And then you might think about laying out some walking boards around your plants. This is something that I tell myself every year to do, and then I never do it, but it's a good practice to have for like growing pumpkins or some of your larger plants. The walking boards help the soil from getting compacted. And I think even Noah talked about using the walking boards in his presentation that he did. And so, but the more you can keep the soil loose, it's going to help with proper oxygen exchange. And it's also going to allow those roots to spread out more. Okay. And then also I grow under plastic. So in my enclosure, you can see I have, I set up shade cloth. Okay. So to kind of keep the temperature down a little bit, shade cloth kind of helps keep those plants from wilting and being stressed out. Okay. So from there, you're basically, from that point is you're just going to want that plant to grow, and you want it to fill up your 25 by 30 foot area or whatever area that you're growing in. You want you want as much foliage as you can get on your plant during that time period while you're waiting for flowers to start developing. Okay, so so that's the goal. Get as many leaves on that plant, and that's going to help you a little bit later on, and it's going to help your fruit to grow better. Okay. All right. So when it comes to growing pumpkins in bushel gourds, you want to also you're going to need to consider training your vines. Okay. And you'll also want to bury the vines at the leaf nodes. And I have a picture on the left side in the middle there that you can see how soil's been placed around those leaf nodes. Okay. And this is going to help promote the root growth. And because at every one of those leaf nodes, roots will grow. Okay. And so by putting that soil around there, those roots are going to grow, and those extra roots actually help to tack down your vines. And not only that, it'll keep them from blowing around on like the windy days and stuff. Okay. So it'll also too, those extra roots that you're able to grow that way is also going to help ensure more nutrients when your fruit starts to grow. Okay, so it's real beneficial. So you want to make sure that that you bury your vines right around those leaf nodes. Okay, and when you grow your pumpkin or bushel gourd, you want to train your vines to grow in what they call a Christmas tree pattern. So you can see on the one picture in the lower left, you can see how it's it's got the main vine, and then it has the secondary vines kind of shooting off to the left and right of that main vine. Okay, that's kind of how you want your plant to grow. Okay, and just one side note too about burying vines. You want to make sure that the soil again is only placed around those leaf nodes. Kind of again how you see in the photo. You don't want to bury the entire vine. Okay. Because that could sometimes cause rot issues in your vines. And so again, just right around those leaf nodes is where you want to bury. Okay. Let's see, you don't need to worry about burying vines with the watermelon plants like you do with pumpkins and bushel gourds, but you may want to tack down those vines when they first start to spread. You can kind of tack them down with like bamboo skewers or something that you can use. And as a plant grows with watermelons, they kind of send out tendrils, and those little tendrils will actually grab onto anything that's on the ground. So that kind of does help to secure those vines a little bit better to the ground too. Outside of that, you want to try and again, get that plant to fill out in the garden as much as you can before the flowers start popping out, okay? With the tomato plants, you're gonna want to need, or you're gonna need to manage them so that they don't turn into a huge bush. Not keeping them maintained is gonna draw energy away from the growth of your tomatoes, and under certain conditions could even promote disease issues. As tomato plants grow, if you remove the suckers, kind of as you see in the picture at the top, if you look, you can see it points out where the suckers are. The suckers, they're grown in the axil of the plant, which is the V area between the leaf branch that branches out from the stem. And so sometimes what I like to do is I'll let those suckers get a couple inches long, and then I'll pinch them off, and then I stick those in water to start new cuttings. So, but you want to, you don't need those suckers there. So get rid of them as early as you see them popping up, unless you want them to grow a little bit so you can start extra plants. But keep those plants nice and trimmed. Typically with the sunflowers, you don't need to do too much with those other than if you live in a windy area, you can give your plants some support. Okay, so where I live, I do have quite a bit of wind. And so what I'll do is I usually will start off with 6-foot tomato stakes for my my plants. And then, I'll tie up my sunflower plant to those. And then eventually as the sunflower grows, or the sunflower stem grows, sometimes if it gets real tall, which in some cases mine have been, anywhere from 10 to 14 feet tall, I will use PVC pipe. And that's just a little bit sturdier. Or if I have to, in some cases when we've had our hurricane issues, I will tie them to the house to just, again, give them that support and keep them protected from that wind. Okay. Something else to keep in mind with those sunflowers is the head of that sunflower. As it grows, the head actually does get heavy. And so it will cause that stem to bend over. So if it gets too heavy, it can actually completely pinch that stem off, and it'll end your season early. So before that happens, have a plan in place to somehow support it. Okay. So I placed a photo in on our slide here, kind of on the left middle somewhat. So you can kind of see what one of our contestants did last year. So you can see how it's bowed over. So, again, that's a good indication of how heavy that sunflower gets for that stem. Is Sam on the call today? Did he make it? I know he signed up. Okay, well, if he's not on, that's okay. I was just gonna have him see if he wanted to make any more suggestions to some of what he's done on his sunflowers in the past, because that actually happens to be his setup last year. For the long gourds, this plant crawls vertically. And so you're gonna either need to build a trellis, kind of like what you see here on the lower photo. And your trellis needs to be between 12 and 15 foot tall. And, or what you can do, we've had contestants in the past that will actually let their long gourds grow up a mango tree or just a big tree that they have. So again, something to think about, but whatever you let your plant crawl on, just remember too, that it needs to be able to support the weight of the plant. And as your long gourd grows, it also needs to support the weight of that gourd. Okay. So the idea is to have that long gourd also grow straight. If it hits the ground, it will start to curve, which you don't want that curve. You want it nice and straight. And, or if it hits the ground, it could also rot, which we've had that happen too. Okay. But know that it's not a total loss. If, your plant hits the ground, or it's going to hit the ground, because sometimes we underestimate, that it's not going to grow 12 foot tall, and then all of a sudden it gets longer than we think it's going to get. We had that happen last year with one of our 4-H, or with one of our young members that did a long gourd last year. You can see his picture in the right hand corner of your screen, and he was able to actually improvise to keep that long gourd growing straight and get it from touching the ground. So again, know that it's not a total loss. If that happens to your long gourd, we can remedy it. But again, if you can prevent it from the get-go, that's going to be a lot better off. And it just happened that this young man actually had our state record this year too. So it was pretty cool. He really lucked out on that. Okay, some of the other things that you need to pay attention to from time to time, you know, from the time that you transplant to when you're ready to pollinate and beyond, is you need to watch your plant for any kind of pest issues or diseases that might happen. And if you check your plants daily, then if pests or diseases come up, then you're able to treat for them before you get some really serious damage. Okay, or better yet, it's probably even better to just stay one step ahead if you already know that you have these pest issues. Okay, so now's the kind of time to start thinking about some of those things so you can kind of prevent them from the get-go. Okay,
Becky, sorry.
go ahead, no worries.
Comment from Justin. He says he's been thinking about using a floating noodle for the neck area to protect from pinching the sunflower heads, you know, jumping back to about the sunflower.
Oh, that might be a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's soft too, so so that might be good on the stem. Yeah, definitely. And again, I love these creative things that people come up with, and again, try it out. If it works, great. If not, know that you can try something else too. But yeah, I like that idea. Cool. So we do have two major pest issues that we hear about every year from a lot of our growers. One of them happens to be pickleworm. The other one happens to be leaf miners. And I have a photo of the pickleworm in the upper left corner, as you see there in the slide. And they typically kind of come out late in the day or early evening or through the evening. They lay their eggs on your plant, and before long, you'll start noticing the larva somewhere on your plant. You can see what the larva looks like there in one of the blossoms in the lower left corner. But they'll lay their eggs and on your plant, and you know, before you know it, you've got larvae everywhere on your plant, okay, or even on your fruit. So so you know, if you leave it untreated or it's not dealt with, then you know, a lot of times it turns out that your plant dies or your fruit. And so so again, something to watch out for. In the upper right corner is leaf miners, or a leaf miner, I should say. And I myself, I don't think I've ever seen a leaf miner on the plants that I have. Typically, the way I know that I have leaf miner issues is when the larva starts leaving the little trails in the leaves, kind of similar to what you see in the lower right photo there. I've always been told that leaf miners don't do harm to your plant, that they just make them look ugly. But that being said, if you have a real severe case of leaf miners, it could lower the productivity of your fruit, or it could make your plant susceptible to other problems later on. Okay. For these situations, again, if you know that you have these issues, plan ahead for it now, don't wait. You can see there in the middle, I've kind of listed a few natural remedies that you can use or think about. Okay, so row crop covers, neem oil, you can make some hot chili pepper spray, use sticky traps, use DE, or you can, you know, prune off some of the bad leaves that are affected, you know, that kind of thing. Okay. And then although we don't get a lot of contestants really alerting us about these pests, know that these two could also be possible, you know, issues that we might have to deal with. And so they could be whitefly that you kind of see on the pictures on the left. Aphids are kind of next, heading to the right. Then of course we've got the snails and the slugs on the far right. And then, oops, and I missed one, which was the thrips. Okay, so so those are some other pests that we have to sometimes deal with. Okay, so I think I'm going to use this time to do another door prize. Okay, so I've got 2 row crop covers that are 10 by 10 in size, so 10 foot by 10 foot. So they will cover a nice size area for your plants. And we have Celeste Douglas. Is she on today? I know she came on early.
Oh, yes. Thank
Yay! All right. So she won a row crop cover, and then the other one is going to Sue-Ann Masuyama. Is she on? No.
Oh, I don't see her name.
Okay. Okay. All right. So again, I'll hold that second one off until the end of the day. So we'll see. All right. So, okay, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about deficiencies and diseases. So while your plants are growing, you're going to want to kind of watch out for the deficiencies and diseases. You know, every year we'll see plants from contestants that are lacking in nitrogen. And a good indication of a nitrogen deficiency is usually been seen with the yellowing of the leaves, kind of what you see kind of on the top left and bottom left pictures. Okay, so you can see the 2 pictures. We have tomato on the top and pumpkin plants on the bottom. And so with these 2 plants, the plant on the left side that's kind of yellowing, those are said to be deficient in nitrogen. And then the ones on the right, you can see are greener in color, and that's kind of what you're trying to strive for. Okay, it's best to have a fertilizing plan for your plants, and I would recommend fertilizing every couple of weeks, but read your directions because it might suggest something different. But at the very least, I would probably be fertilizing at least every 2 weeks. Don't wait until your plant starts to turn yellow before you start thinking about fertilizing. I know Donna was nice enough to suggest some fertilizers like fish emulsion or Bioflora or Nutri-Rich. Those are some organic pelleted fertilizers that you can use. Again, be sure to follow the label requirements for fertilizing, and know that using more than the recommended amount can sometimes end up burning your plants or worse. So adding more is not always better. Okay, so again, keep that in mind. Use the label to know how much you need to be using for fertilizing. Light can also be a problem. We see this a lot in our tomatoes. You can see the picture in the top middle there. Initially, it starts off with dark spots that form on the older foliage, kind of near the ground. That's where it usually starts to develop. The tissue around the spots often turn yellow and then it dies. Damp, warm, rainy summers that we can kind of get could cause a situation, or it could make the situation worse. So applying like an organic soap concentrate, this is something that Donna suggested, using organicide will help. And it also is good for treating white flies, aphids, and thrips, if you should have those pests too. So something that you might think about there too. And she says that they sell it at Garden Exchange, Farm Supply Co-op in Hilo, and you can probably even find it at the Farm and Garden in Kona. Okay. Other things that I read that could help, help your plant from getting blight would be things like keeping your plant fertilized properly to maintain that vigorous plant growth, keeping the leaves dry. So in our case, don't expose your plant, tomato plant, to our rain. If you can build a cover of some sort or get a cover of some sort for your tomatoes, I think that that's going to probably help this situation. And then hand watering your plants or using drip irrigation to water your plants, you know, to avoid the splashing on the leaves will also help. And then keeping your plants, your tomato plants trimmed so that they can get proper airflow is also hopefully going to help with that blight issue. Okay. As for other deficiencies and diseases, on the far right, 2 photos that you see, one of them on the top there is blossom end rot, and the one on the bottom right is powdery mildew. You can see that both of these from time to time will be on your plants over the summertime. I know that last year we seemed to have quite a few blossom end rot issues at the start of our season. But as far as powdery mildew, I think we see that every year. And someone else, please chime in if needed. But my understanding with blossom end rot is that the main cause is from a calcium deficiency in the plant, which can be caused by lower calcium levels in the soil, or the soil that's, you know, a soil that's either over or underwatered. Okay. And from what I've read too, blossom end rot can also be caused by a pH imbalance, using too much nitrogen fertilizer, high salt levels in the soil, and can also be from, it's also sometimes more often in plants that we grow in containers because of the fluctuation of the moisture in the containers. So those of you that are planning on doing the 5-gallon bucket challenge, you know, we need to be cautious on that. Okay. It also suggested that you water consistently and evenly. So don't overwater if you miss a day, just water it like you would normally do otherwise. And then ensure that your garden bed or containers that you're growing in have plenty of good drainage. Water deeply and less frequently rather than often and shallowly. Okay. So, you know, they say to stick your finger in the dirt near the plant, and it needs to be moist about 2 to 3 inches down. Okay. And then if you're able to get a soil test done early, and that's also helpful to know early on if your soil is going to be deficient of calcium. And if needed, you could supplement the soil with things like bone meal, gypsum, or other similar type products. Okay. Again, we mentioned about the powdery mildew there on the lower right corner. We can see that this, you know, we again get this when we get a lot of wet summers. So again, keeping those leaves dry is going to be the key. Otherwise, preventing with a fungicide. I use Daconil, and that helps, and I apply it about every couple weeks. And Donna, does Organicide, does that work on powdery mildew too? Do you know? Donna, are you on? You
She might be on the phone.
Oh, she's on the phone.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we'll come back to that. But I you know, I wasn't sure if she had any suggestions for powdery mildew, but we can come back and ask her afterwards. Okay, so roughly, I'd say about maybe 6 to 8 weeks after you get the plants in the ground, you should start seeing flowers develop. Again, you want your plant to get as much foliage during that downtime period, if you want to call it. You want to try to get as much foliage as possible before you consider pollinating. Sometimes contestants, you know, they get excited, you know, that, you know, when they get their plant home, it never fails. I always get at least 1 or 2 calls a year that somebody's excited because their plant a week after they got it home starts to flower out. If that happens, it's possible that that's more from plant stress than it is from the, you know, time for pollinating. Okay. So again, you want these plants to get big, and you want lots of foliage on it before you even start considering pollinating, because again, if the plant is too small, it's not going to be able to cover the nutrients that it needs for developing the fruit and making it grow. Okay. With tomato plants, what you want to watch out for is what we call mega blooms. And so with the mega blooms, basically what that is, it's a cluster of flowers. So if you look at, excuse me, if you can look at the photo in the upper right corner there, you can see that it's a cluster of flowers just on one stem, okay? And they look kind of strange. And then once you start getting tomatoes, then they even look even more strange. But it's not going to be a round tomato, okay? It sometimes looks like 2 or 3 or even 4 tomatoes conjoined, okay? And I think the earliest that I've ever seen flowers pop up on my tomato plants was when it was about maybe 18 inches tall. And we used to say that, you know, the mega blooms were the only ones that we wanted. So pull off any single flowers that you had. But now I'm going to start recommending, and I think I even did this a little bit last year, was leave those single blooms on, which the single blooms are not circled in that that upper right corner picture there. The one that's circled is the mega blooms, and that's what you want to look for. The other ones above that circle are single bloom flowers. You know, I used to say remove those, but now I tell people, let's keep those on until you get a mega bloom, because sometimes it happens that the plants won't give you a mega bloom. We've had really good years where everybody's getting mega blooms, and then there's been other years where, you know, maybe only 1 or 2, you know, I've seen them. Or even on my plants, I might get a mega bloom that doesn't set, and then I don't see any more mega blooms. So those single flowers, you know, they'll develop a tomato for you, and you know, it might not be as heavy as the mega bloom ones, but at least you'd have an entry for the year. So so don't get too eager on pinching those off. Let's wait until you either get a mega bloom and you know your flower has set, and then at that point, when it's growing really well, then, you know, that would probably be the time to make sure that you pinch those little flowers off. Okay. Tomato flowers, they are self-pollinating. At best, you can maybe blow on them a little bit, you know, real lightly, or tap the flower lightly, or you can shake the plant, you know, just a little bit, and that'll kind of help get that pollen to where it needs to be. Excuse me, I need to get some water here. Excuse me 1 second. Oh, much better. Okay, so anyways, so I was talking about the pollinating, you know, again, on those tomatoes, you know, they do self-pollinate. So at the most, you know, either blow on them, tap on the flower a little bit, or shake them a little bit to kind of get that pollen, you know, helping out that flower a little bit. But once your tomato does set, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tie something to it to support it. And so I don't know if you can see the picture. It's kind of on the bottom of those tomato pictures. But some people, they'll use like, they'll make slings out of things like pantyhose, or I use, excuse me, the row crop cover fabric, you know, when I don't need it for covering up stuff, sometimes I'll make little slings from that. Whatever it is that you use, you want it so that it will dry easily if it gets wet. And so you can see there, again, they've used the pantyhose to kind of construct a little sling. And you want to get that on there when the tomato starts getting, you know, noticeably larger, but not too large, because I've waited like 1 day too late, and it will pinch off the stem. So so you really got to watch that a little bit and try to get those things in a sling as early as you can. And then also what I'll do is I'll actually put a lightweight cover over the top that if it gets wet, it dries quickly. Because the whole idea with these tomatoes is to keep them as green as long as you possibly can. And the longer they stay green, the longer they're going to keep growing. As soon as they start to turn color, or you start noticing that tinge of orange, reddish, yellowish color on that tomato, at that point, it's a little bit too late. So get that cover over those green tomatoes as from, you know, the time that you see that it's set, and that'll hopefully help a little bit with your tomatoes. Okay. In the far left there, you see some pumpkin flowers and what they look like. You'll see that we have the male and the female flowers. Typically with the male flowers, they're just a flower with a stem. The female flowers will typically have a little fruit underneath them. And you typically will see the male flowers first. And then about a week or so later is when you start seeing the female flowers. And it usually takes anywhere from about 7 to 10 days for those flowers to open up. And usually for pumpkins anyways, your best place on the vine for those that you're going to want to consider pollinating will be roughly at about the 10 to 15 foot mark. Okay. And you can certainly let Mother Nature pollinate for you. But if you hand pollinate, you know the genetics behind that pumpkin. And it's also, you know, something to keep in mind is when you're going to pollinate, you want to pollinate as early in the morning as you can when those flowers open up. Okay. So you can kind of see there in the lower left picture how they're hand pollinating that flower. So they take the male flower and they're pollinating that female flower. Okay. And then we typically like to close the petals up for about 24 hours. And that basically ensures that nothing else is going to pollinate it. Okay. And so, so as far as when your pumpkin sets, if it's doing good and that pollination was a good, you know, a good pollination, you're going to start to see that pumpkin start to grow in about 3 to 4 days. You'll just see that pumpkin just growing. And so something you want to do when you are, you know, you have a good feel that that pumpkin is growing and it's possibly set, you're going to want to get it up off the ground and get a piece of plywood and some sand, just kind of how you see there in the middle picture there with the pumpkin on the sand. And that's going to help to keep that pumpkin from sitting on wet ground. Okay. And it'll keep it from rotting. Okay. Very, very important. And as we kind of get closer to those times in our growing period, you know, during our monthly talk story sessions, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about other things related to like pumpkins and stuff. But this is something definitely you want to kind of start planning for and to keep in mind. Okay. When it comes to our bushel gourds and our lawn gourds, you can see those flowers there and on the left-hand side of your screen there. Again, the male flowers are just going to have a flower on a stem. The female flowers are actually going to have those little fruits underneath. And the difference here with these is that the flowers, as you can see, they're white flowers instead of yellow flowers like the pumpkins. But if you have white flowers, they open up at night, okay, or in the early evening. So that's going to be the time when you're going to want to be pollinating those, okay. And same thing, you know, as far as with bushel gourds, after a few days, when that fruit is set, and you can see kind of what I did in the upper right corner there. I had a bushel gourd that I grew last year. As soon as I saw that it was growing, I went ahead and I got it on a piece of plywood and some sand. And then as it grows, you're going to continue to just put sand around the outside of that fruit. And as it grows, it will just grow on top of that sand. Okay. So real important there. Okay.
Nancy, question from McLean. The cover, sorry, going back, the cover on the tomato, in order to keep it green, did you mean to shade it from the sun? I guess that's
Correct. And so that's basically what you're doing is, you know, this picture that I have here just shows the tomato in a sling. And again, when we have our monthly talk stories, we'll get a little more into detail of the sling and the cover and stuff. But yes, you'll want to have a lightweight cover that will protect it from the sun. Okay. So, so getting back on that bushel gourd there, you can see that I did get it up off the ground with some sand and a piece of plywood. And then as it grew, I continued to add the sand along the side so that as the bushel gourd grew, you know, it was always on that sand up off the ground. And then I also, you can see there that I used a card table to make for a cover, as well as using a tarp to keep the sun off of the fruit. And just like we showed with the tomato plant, this is something that you need to do with your pumpkins and your, well, actually with all of your plants or your fruit, I should say, not plants, but your fruit, because what that'll do is your skin on these plants are going to be very tender. And just like people, if you're out in the sun and you don't put like sunscreen on, your skin gets like leather. Well, that's kind of the same thing will happen with your fruit. It's the skin on it is gonna get hard, and it could split your fruit and eventually kill it. So keeping it covered keeps it, you know, keeps that skin growing nicely the way you need it. Okay, it just protects it from the excess heat. Okay, and then you can see the same thing basically with our watermelons. At the top pictures there, you can see the difference between the male and the female flowers, and basically how you go about hand pollinating those. And I haven't yet figured out the timing when these flowers open up. Typically, it seems like the male flowers, they open up at sunrise, but the female flowers are they vary. Sometimes it's early morning and sometimes it's late morning hours. And so you kind of just have to watch for those. But you can see again, once the fruit starts to grow, you want to get it up off the ground. In this case with tomatoes, we don't put them up on sand and plywood. What we do is we put them up on a grate. And so shelving works perfect for this type of thing if you've got extra shelving laying around. So this happens to be one of my plants that I was growing one year. So you can see I've got it up off the shelf or up off the ground with the shelf grate. And then I've got the poles and then the top grate, of course. And then I've got a tarp that I used to kind of cover it. And that worked out perfectly for the growing of my watermelons. Okay. Okay, so a couple other important things to keep in mind. Let's see here. Okay, so the best way to kind of keep up with what's going on with our contest is to join our Facebook group page. To find us, you can search Hawaii County 4-H Giant Fruit and Vegetable Contest. It is the group page. You do have to join to be a part of it. And so we don't just let anybody in, of course, because we do have youth that participate. You know, a lot of times it's their parents, but youth can be a part of it. And so so it is a, you know, closed group. And so, you know, you would request to join, and then we let you in. And periodically we ask that you post pictures of your plant's progress. Okay. Or if, you know, need be, you can send me the pictures and I'll get them up if you don't do Facebook. But we want to, you know, again, promote what it is that you guys are doing as often as you're doing, just so that the growers can see, the mainland growers that donated the seeds, so that they can see the progress that you're making. And, you know, they like to see how you're doing. And not only that, it gets them excited to see what you guys are doing. And this helps me every year after our contest. You know, they see what we've done and they're more eager to continue donating seeds to our project. So, so yeah, so I'm going to ask that of all of you guys, regardless of where you live. So if you're on other islands, please, please, please send me, you know, pictures every couple of weeks if you can, and just let us know what you're doing. Okay. Another thing to talk about that's very important is, even though, again, these seeds or these plants as part of the contest genetically have the potential to grow monster-sized fruit. We want you to set realistic goals for your project here. And so a good goal for anyone that's doing this contest for the first time, it's just to keep your plant alive, keep it healthy, and try to get a fruit or a vegetable to the contest, regardless of what the size is. Okay, don't be ashamed if your entry seems small, because sometimes it'll surprise you. Okay, plus everyone needs to start somewhere. We call that our personal best. And so what we do is you grow the plant, you weigh something in, you get your personal best. Okay, and that's an official personal best for your year, your growing year. And then after that, then your goal is to try and hopefully grow it again next year, or if you have time, in some cases like tomatoes or whatever, try again and see if you can get your tomato to be bigger than what the other one was. Okay, so set realistic goals. As far as record keeping, something that something that we definitely want everybody to keep track of, you know, in a journal or some other kind of document, you know, or, you know, in your planner, whatever it might be, document what it is that you're doing with your plants. Okay. You want to document the ID of your plant, so you know which plants that you have and which one you're growing. Okay. This is really important because when the contest comes on our entry form, we do ask you what plant this is. And like if you hand pollinated, which one was the female plant, which one was the male flower that you use. So which one was the female flower, which one was the male. And so very, very important. Okay. So to know your plants. Also, like if you treat your plants for any kind of pests or diseases, document that down. So you know when it was treated. If you pollinate with 2 different plants, again, document this down, and also document the day that you pollinate, because there's certain milestones, especially for your larger fruits and vegetables. You know, a lot of times, you know, you'll show a picture of your pumpkin, let's say, and we'll say, okay, well, how many days since pollination is that pumpkin that you have there? Okay. And so if you know when you pollinated it, it's going to be easier to determine how many days that pumpkin is. We typically, for our larger fruit, will take 30-day waits. So again, if you know when you pollinated it, you know that 30 date, it's easier to compare your 30-day fruit with somebody else's. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, as far as our record keeping is concerned, for our youth, we do have a contest category for the best record keeping photo diary. And so I want to encourage all of our kids for them to definitely enter that contest. We didn't have it last year, but we'll definitely have it this year. And I will be getting out a template that you can follow for your record keeping, or you can make up your own if you want. That's perfectly fine too. So we've seen it both ways. Okay. Whoops. Okay. And then plant ID. Again, we've stressed this before, that it's important to know which plants you have. When you select your plants, I do document which plants you take, but I don't know once you get them home which plant is which. So I do usually use like popsicle sticks with permanent marker. I'll put what the plant is, but a lot of times that permanent marker doesn't stay permanent all summer. So you need to make yourself a little sign or something so that when you post those photos, if I ask you what plant is that from, you're going to be able to tell me which one it is. Okay, without having to go back through your cell phone camera pictures to try to figure out which one it was. Okay, so make sure you ID those plants so you know which one it is. Pretty easy, and so when we ask, we have that. Again, I mentioned that about the growers. They are going to be looking for their names when they pop up, and again, that's just going to help us with donated seeds for our next year's project. So again, you'll hear me stress on that quite a bit. Earlier, I mentioned about the 150 square foot Atlantic Giant contest. So if you don't have, say, a 25 by 30 area to grow an Atlantic Giant pumpkin, but you still want to grow one, the mainland does have a contest to try and grow the largest pumpkin in a 150 square foot area, which is basically a 10 by 15 foot area. There is a $4 fee to do that contest. And the deadline to let me know is May 1st. I did send out the rules recently. If you need me to send them out again, let me know so I can get those to you. And then we also have the 5-gallon bucket challenge. We had quite a few families that did this contest last year. I don't believe there was an entry fee last year, and I don't think that there'll be an entry fee again this year. I think it was just something for fun. But our presenter that we had last year that had the Guinness World Record pumpkin at 9.65, he's going to be our presenter again, or one of our presenters again, for our May 1st seminar. And he has offered to do a Hawaii 5-gallon bucket challenge. So again, something to think about if you guys want to do that. And he mentioned about having some prizes that he could send us from New York. So I think that'd be kind of fun. So if, say, you don't have the space to grow it out in a garden bed, a 5-gallon bucket might be something worth trying. Or it could also be, we've had the fabric bags that were 5 gallons. It just has to be something that doesn't hold more than 5 gallons of soil. Okay. And let's see. If I haven't already mentioned that contest, you need to let me know of your interest by May 1st. Okay. And the gentleman that is going to be our presenter at our May 1st seminar, he will probably even give you more details to that contest. He did send me out some information that I sent out to everybody already. So you should have that information. And it actually talks about the person who won that contest last year and what they did. So take a look at that if you're considering doing this contest. I think that information will help you out. And then next, I want to mention about our giving back to our project. You know, there's a lot of cost that goes into the program every year, and 4-H is known for giving back. This year, I may be asking for some of you to give back to our program in the form of seeds from the plants that you've grown. So mainly, if your entry should be of a significant size, I may be contacting you and asking if you'd be willing to donate that fruit, or, you know, seeds from the sunflowers, which mostly that's what I'm going to be looking at. Sunflower seeds are really hard to come by, and we'd like to continue that fruit, if you want to call it that, mainly because it's a very popular project. So I may be contacting you guys. So I'm hoping that you will be willing to help us out if we ask for some help. And then next, please, oh guys, this is a big one here. Please enter our contest. If you're able to harvest a fruit or vegetable from your plants, our hope is that everyone will be successful and that you'll be able to harvest something. We need to be able to continue to show impacts from our project to keep having it every year. And so again, never be ashamed of your entry, even if you think it's just too small. Again, it's just the idea that you got something is better than not having anything at all. Because sometimes there are people that just struggle, and I've had that happen myself, where, you know, I try to grow something and it just doesn't take. And so so having a small entry is better than not having one at all. Okay. And
Becky?
yes.
Sorry,
No
question
worries.
from Anne. Has the giant green pepper contest ended? Or
Yes.
indoor giant green? Okay.
Yeah, so, and that question is a great question. We did have a side contest during the downtime. We only had a couple people. And actually, Anne, if your plant is still alive, you're one of the lucky ones. I don't know if Sam is on, but Sam did have some challenges with his plant, and he thought it might come back, but he wasn't sure. My plant, I ended it yesterday. It didn't get any bigger than 1 inch. So so if your plant, if you still have a plant, then keep growing it, and let's see where we get with that for this year.
She said it's alive and it's only about 6 inches tall.
Okay, so stick it outside because that contest has ended. Stick it outdoors now. You don't have to keep it indoors anymore. And let's see if the outside sunshine does it a little bit better, because that's what they're thinking, that it wasn't hot enough in our houses, or in, like in my case, in my office. And so so let's see, who knows, it might grow, and if it doesn't, well, at least we gave it our best shot. They say pepper plants are really hard to grow. Okay, let's see. Where did I leave off on the give back? Oh, and I talked about entering our contest. So again, make sure that regardless of the size, let's try and get those entries to our contest. Again, if you have something, hey, that just makes you more of a winner because you got something to our contest. Know that if your entry ends up ready before our contest day, just let me know. So at least I have this knowledge down for our records so that we can kind of track when everybody's plants are ready, so that, you know, again, we can use that to determine our start dates for next year. And I'll try, you know me, I'm real flexible, even though I mentioned at the start, you know, we want to try and get as many entries to our contest, but I will make the effort to weigh your entries for you so you know what they weighed. And just know that unless they're entered in the contest, they won't be eligible for the contest, but we'll still weigh them for you so you know what your personal best is. And another thing with weighing your entries, you know, for those of you that have small entries like tomatoes and such, try to keep from weighing them on your kitchen scales, because it just would be so nice to have that lead up to weighing them and having that you know, that moment of suspense and learning what it is. And so it kind of kills the whole suspense of what your entries weigh when you weigh them before it gets to the contest. And so so just something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, and then lastly, we want to have you guys stay one step ahead. We know what issues we have for weather, pests, and diseases. We've talked about them today. So be proactive and figure out, again, a way to prevent the worst from happening before it happens, or at least have a plan in place for when it happens so that you're able to get on it quickly before it destroys your plants. Okay. And oh, by all means, you got to have fun, because that's what it's all about. Okay. So, so are there any questions, Christine? Or feel free to unmute if you want.
No questions yet in chat.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop share screening, but I do want to say, you know, that you know, this is basically our presentation and our orientation for today, but you know, I don't want it to be something overwhelming to you if this is your first time in the contest. You know, again, basically what you want to try to do is you know, try your best to, you know, to do what you can do. Don't hesitate to ask for help again if you need it, because again, we're always going to be there for you. Before, you know, everybody leave, just a few quick announcements that I want to make. First, be sure to mark your calendar for next month, Saturday, May 1st. Again, we're going to be holding our annual seminar on that day. And we have, again, some really great mainland growers that are looking forward to meeting you all. And so I'd really like to have a good audience for them. And this will be an opportunity for you guys to ask any questions to them. And so start thinking about questions that you have about growing giants, or anything you've ever thought about how they might have grown giants, that kind of thing. And because nothing's going to be off limits. Our presenters have been always really good about sharing their secrets, but you have to initiate the questions for them, okay? And because they don't know what's on your mind and what you're thinking. So it's very informal, meaning that those of you that have sat in on it can justify to this that you know, as long as we're asking questions, you know, we keep the seminar going, and we've gotten some really good discussions and stuff. And so jot down those questions as you think about them, have them on a piece of paper, and then have them ready for when we meet with our presenters on May 1st. And again, I'm going to be starting tomatoes and cabbage this week. So if you signed up for those, you might start getting ready for them. If it turns out that, you know, based off of some things that you learned today, that maybe, oh, giant pumpkins, I don't have the space for giant pumpkins, but you know, I didn't put giant tomatoes and cabbage on there, but I do have the space for those. Get a hold of me. We'll make this work for you, so you at least have something that you can grow this year. And yeah, so I'll be getting those started. Go ahead.
Lisa said that she won seeds last year and she's happy to donate some to the program.
Oh, okay. That would be great, Lisa. Or again, keep them for backups for your plants this year. So if something happens, then you've got them. But yeah, either way, thank you. And
oh, Sandy
go ahead.
also said, I think the seminar you're mentioning is one of the best seminars all year, and she wants to know what's available for this year.
Okay, so what I've got lined up right now, as I mentioned just a bit ago, we have Steve and Janine Marley from New York. Steve and Janine, they're known as Pork Chop and Lamb Chop. They actually grew the world record in 2019 with their giant tomato, which was, what did I say, 9.65 pounds. So you can just imagine how big that tomato might have been. And they were just a lot of fun to have last year. They've been following everything that we've been doing this past year, and they actually offered to come back again to talk with us. So I was real excited to hear that they wanted to help us again. And so they've been a real big supporter. And not only that, they donated a new variety of tomato seeds for us. Again, I don't have a lot, but we're going to make that work for those of you that are going to be especially participating in the 5-gallon bucket challenge, because I know that he was real eager to see how those would do in that kind of a challenge. But either way, we'll have some tomato seeds to kind of help you guys out with that bucket challenge if you're interested. And yeah, and then we've got Chris Brown from oh, where's Chris from? Just slipped my mind. I think he's either from, I want to say he's from Illinois or Indiana, I think. And he actually had a world record this year with a giant summer squash of some sort. I forget what kind of squash it was. Spaghetti, no, not spaghetti. It was a summer squash of some sort, but he actually had a world record, and he's grown a lot of different things. And I want to say, I think he came pretty close to getting a world record, or might have even gotten a world record on his sunflower head. And so he's gonna be here, and he's grown a lot of different things. I've relied on him quite a bit to help me with some of the rules on some of our odds and end kind of fruits and vegetables that we don't actually grow, but other growers have grown and wanted to enter in our contests and stuff. And then we have Cindy. Oh, Cindy, what's your last? Too many things on my mind. Her name's gonna catch up to me here in just a little bit. But anyway, she's from Washington State, and she has had a lot of success with pumpkins and long gourds and a lot of the other fruits and vegetables, a lot of which we're growing. And so she's also going to be coming on as a presenter. She's done really well in making a lot of state records, and it would not surprise me if this year she gets a world record or something, because she's done so well with all of her entries and stuff. So they're all going to be on hand to help in you know, answering a lot of questions that everybody has, and hopefully give us some good advice that we can try out this year. Okay. And then I did have one more door prize. And that was a consultation that Jim Sherwood offered to our group. And so one person is going to have an actual face-to-face, I guess, on Zoom, where they can talk, he'll talk to them and help them get started with their plants off to a good start. And the person that he pulled for that one was Paul Towlett. Was Paul on by any chance? Bummer. All right, well, that prize is gonna probably end up going into our slot for next month's door prize. And then let's see, did anybody else happen to show up? Let me go back through my list. I had let's see, we had Celeste was on. And then did Sue and Matsuyama ever make it on? Okay, so if she's not on, there'll be one more 10 by 10 row crop cover that we'll give away the next time. And then, let's see, we had the tomato fertilizer, bagged fertilizer, and that one was given to McLean, which I don't know if he's still on, good, okay. And then we had, what was the other one? Oh, our pump, let's see, our door prize for the liquid fertilizer was B Love. Did she ever show up? I don't see her on. And then did Edith Atkins ever come on? Skimming through here. Nope, she didn't make it either. So, so again, there's going to be a couple door prizes for our next one. And what we'll do is we'll have our presenters select who will be getting those door prizes. So, so again, information on that. I'm still waiting just on a couple photos that I could use for our flyer for our presenters. And I'm hoping to get that information out this week. And yeah, so that's basically it. Does anybody have any questions before we go for today?
I have this. Oh,
Go ahead,
go ahead.
just ramble out.
I was just gonna say a couple things since
Sure.
we have like time. What I've been working on is working on my my worm composting bucket, which you can look up on YouTube, and you can make a really simple one just with a small container that you can get from Home Depot. And that with the composting worms, it's so fast. They can break down your compost, like lettuce and all your scraps from the kitchen table, really quickly, and it makes a really good soil enhancer, which can help with when we do have a lot of rain and everything like that. It'll help with controlling that moisture and helping the plant so it doesn't get too wet, and also building up your regular compost. And I always like to have cinder around. When I did the five gallon bucket challenge last year, about a third of my bucket was just cinder on the very bottom. That way I knew that it was going to drain no matter how much rain or how much water I fed it. The plant was going to be okay. And the one that I did, it did pretty well. I think I got a pound tomato off of it. But that's something to consider too, is try to get everything all set up so that you have it around your property. And that way it's low cost, that you don't have to necessarily buy fertilizer. You can use, your food scraps and green waste around your yard to help build up the soil. Yeah.
Okay. Again, if you guys didn't sign in, if you came in late today, make sure that you sign up. So, sign in with your name and everybody that's with your party, just so that I got that down. And yeah, Sandy had a question about what is our tentative start date. So again, earlier on, you must have maybe come in late. I did have a chart to kind of give everybody a little bit of an idea of when we're going to be starting. Tomatoes, I'm going to be starting next week along with cabbage. And I hope to have those ready sometime, hopefully if they grow well and stuff, hopefully they'll be ready to start giving out sometime in early May. Okay. And then we've got a bunch of other dates and stuff. Again, I have been recording this, so what we'll do is we'll get the recording out to everybody, so then they've got that to refer back to later on. So yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Anne. Yeah, let's let's take a look at post it on our Facebook page, because I think Chris would enjoy seeing how that turned out. So, and I'll see if I can get the same from Sam when I can get a hold of him. So, okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much, and we'll hopefully see you guys all on May 1st. All right. Okay, so we'll see you then. Bye.